That's right. We're down to the Elite Eight in the NFL. It is divisional round weekend, and it looks like we've got some very compelling and interesting matchups, some contrast in styles. Let's hope for a good weekend of NFL football indeed. In terms of my picks for last week, I was 4-2, both in picking winners against the spread. Certainly not something to be proud about, but it is what it is. So for the season, again, did pretty well. 177 and 85 picking winners straight up, and 140 and 23 against the spread. Let's see how I can do on this divisional weekend. Maybe I can go for 4 for 4 in both categories. You got 2 games on Saturday, starting Saturday afternoon, and then, of course, you got the 2 games following up on Sunday. First, you got the Los Angeles Rams traveling to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Kind of that old conflicting styles matchup of top defense versus top offense. And the Rams coming off of last week with, I think, gutsy performance against the Seahawks on the road, beating their divisional rival, with the questions that they had at quarterback. First they had Wofford starting, and then he goes down, and Jared Goff tries to tough it out with the thumb injury the best he can. And he certainly wasn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but did enough, just enough when it mattered, and that Rams defense was dominant, and they took advantage of Russell Wilson being Russell Wilson. And sometimes Russell Wilson being Russell Wilson can be really, really good. And then there are other times where he gets too far off of the script, gets too caught up in kind of the fly by the seat of the pants, and he struggles. And he makes some really bad plays. And that's exactly what happened in that Rams defense. Like, if this was the league of maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you would look at this Rams defense and say, hey, if the Rams can run the ball enough to control the clock, they might be a Super Bowl team. The challenge is, though, when you look at today's game, today's league, and just how important it is to be able to score points on offense, to be able to throw the ball, to have that top-notch quarterback, you just worry whether or not the Rams are asking for a blowout at the hands of the Packers on Sunday. And I think it's somewhat reflecting in the fact that Green Bay are 6.5-point favorites heading into this matchup. I look at this and I say, for the Rams to have a chance, Aaron Donald's going to have to play, and he's going to have to be dominant, getting some pass rush up the middle. And then you've got Leonard Floyd coming like a heat-seeking missile on the outside. They're going to have to get pressure in Aaron Rodgers' face, which is easier said than done. But, you've got to get him uncomfortable. You've got to get some pressure on him, especially up the middle. Now, as far as another key marquee matchup, obviously, is going to be Jaylen Ramsey against Devante Adams, and that should be a fun one, assuming Ramsey is going to shadow Devante Adams most of the day. So it's going to be important for other members of the Packers receiving corps to step up and make some plays. We'll see how well the Packers are able to run the ball against that Los Angeles Rams front seven. But I look at this game and I say, the Packers right now have to be the clear favorites in the NFC, but even that's got to scare you a little bit. Like, I could look at the NFC and I could make a case for any of those 4 teams being the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl. That said, personally, I think you're looking at this and you're saying Aaron Rodgers is not just better than Jared Goff by a little bit, even a healthy Jared Goff. He's better by a wide margin, a significant margin. And the Rams, even against the Packers defense, are going to have some challenges scoring some points where that shouldn't be as much of a problem for Green Bay going up against the Rams defense. Even if the Rams defense shuts them down early, they should be able to figure it out eventually and get some points on the board. So I do like Green Bay in this matchup. So give me Green Bay minus the 6.5. Now, the nightcap is Baltimore traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. You got a matchup of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Sign me up for that shit. The Ravens coming off of last week's performance in the wild card round on the road at Tennessee, getting a measure of revenge against the team that eliminated them in the divisional round last year. Meanwhile, Buffalo comes into this matchup feeling okay, I suppose. They did enough to hold on and beat the Colts last week. Certainly wasn't a dominant performance, but hey, a win is a win, and they'll take it. Now you look at these 2 teams, built around young quarterbacks. Baltimore, you would expect to have a bit of an edge overall in terms of being able to run the football. The Bills certainly having an advantage in terms of being able to move the football through the air. This is one I keep going back and forth on. And you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, Buffalo's a 2.5-point favorite. They have the better record in the regular season. I really like this Buffalo team. But does Baltimore have a little bit of momentum, winning their last few games of the season to even get into the playoffs and then beating Tennessee? Like, are they exercising some demons? And does that make them a dangerous team in this spot here on the road again? And it most certainly could. And I'm really, really torn about who I pick in this matchup because, unlike Green Bay and Los Angeles, I just envisioned Green Bay is going to have too much. And the Rams' defense just isn't going to be enough. If it was 10 or 15 years ago in the NFL, maybe, but not now. But this matchup, man, I just don't know. I'm going to go ahead and take Buffalo minus the 2.5. But if you're asking me, do I feel very, very confident about that pick, the answer is obviously hell to the no. Now, when we switch over to the Sunday games, you start off with a really intriguing one that should be a real contrast in styles, similar to the Rams and Green Bay one, and that is the Browns traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. And it's surprising to me a little bit that the Chiefs are 10-point favorites because you see a number of people in the media, a number of people on Twitter talk about how they like the Browns in this matchup, whether that's to flat out win or just keep this really close and competitive with the Chiefs. And I get some of that because the Browns had a nice win last week over the Steelers. They're a team that can really run the ball. And if they can run the ball and control the clock, taking a page maybe out of what the Bears tried to do last week against the Saints, run the ball, control the clock, keep the time of possession and possessions in general to a minimum for Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense, stick around, hang in there, and the longer you hang in there, the more pressure you actually put on the Chiefs because they're the defending champs. They were the top seed. They're 14-2. Like, there is pressure there. There's significant pressure to repeat there. And the Browns could come in loose and carefree. They've already won a playoff game on the road. They could sit there and look at this and say, hey, we got nothing to lose. And that could certainly make them a dangerous opponent. But when it comes down to it, the Browns secondary is not very good. And even the Steelers, showed that last week, even when Big Ben was throwing interceptions. This Browns defense is not very good. And the Steelers were able to put up a crap ton of points. You could talk about, it felt like it was garbage time and prevent everything else. Yeah, but, the Steelers came back and made that game a whole hell of a lot more interesting than it really should be. And you're talking about a Chiefs offense with the best quarterback in the league right now in Patrick Mahomes, great weapons like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, etc. Like, this is a team that could put up points. They could put up points in an abundance, and they could put up points in a hurry. And when you look at this Browns defense, can they really hold up for 60 minutes against Mahomes and the Chiefs? I don't think they can. I think this is a similar situation to a smaller degree of, again, what the Bears tried to do with the Saints. They tried to play it tight, play it slow, play it conservative, control the clock, minimize the possessions that Drew Brees and the Saints had, hope that the coach, in this case Sean Payton, would make some mistakes and some bad decisions, and God, did he certainly ever last Sunday. And Andy Reid is prone to having one of those from time to time. So your hope is you hang in close, and who knows what happens. But eventually, the more talented team wins out. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. So I understand why people are big on the Browns here, but I'm not that big on them. I think the 10-point spread potentially is a little big. But let's put it this way. Do you really trust Baker Mayfield in this spot? Really? So give me the Chiefs to win. I'll give the Browns the benefit of the doubt and say they covered the 10. But, yeah, I can't go that far as to pick the Brownies to win. And then the nightcap, you got Tampa Bay taking on New Orleans, the two oldest quarterbacks to ever face off in the playoffs. It's Tom Brady, it's Drew Brees. For all intents and purposes, we would assume one last time. Because if the Saints lose, it sure seems like this is Drew Brees' last game in the National Football League. And if Tom Brady loses, he may come back, but Drew Brees still might be done at the end of the season. So big pressure, big stakes. No surprise that this is the feature matchup of the weekend. You've got the Saints only favored by 3, which is a bit surprising when you look at the fact that the Saints beat the Bucs twice during the regular season and beat them relatively handily. And for those that say it's really, really hard to beat a team 3 times in the same year, historically, not really. You've seen it happen quite a few times. That's a narrative that really isn't grounded in reality. You would think in theory it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a row during a season. You would think that the team that lost the first 2 times would have figured it out. But this is also a situation where when they played way back in week 1, the Saints had more than enough to easily handle the Bucs. The Bucs didn't look good. And then when they faced off in the middle of the year, like New Orleans boat racing, what was it, 38-3? I mean, the Bucs and Brady were god-awful that day. And you're also talking about a Bucs team that had to struggle to hold off the 7-9 Washington football team on the road last week. That was not exactly an impressive marquee performance for a team that you're expecting to round into form this time of year and be a real threat for the Super Bowl. Well, that said, I also got to go to the Saints, and I say, they didn't do anything that was really worth writing home about last week against the Bears. They should have blown those jokers out 40-3. But they had troubles executing at key moments. Sean Payton made some really chicken shit conservative decisions early on that impacted that team. So I look at the Saints team and I say, even though they handled the Bucs mightily in the first two regular season games, I can certainly understand why people aren't fully bought in and sold on them dominating the Bucs a third time around. As the team I saw last week, eventually they had enough to come back and, take over and dominate the Bears in the second half, but who the fuck are the Bears? They were an 8-8 team that backdoored into the playoffs, starting Mitchell Trubisky as their quarterback. Give me a break. Like, that's not playoff worthy at all. The Buccaneers, at least, are playoff worthy. You know what I mean? So I look at this matchup and I say, is this going to be Drew Brees' last game with the Saints? And the one thing that's scary about the Saints is in recent years, they've had a propensity for losing some games they absolutely should have won, finding ways to lose games, and I think they're going to do so again Sunday. Even though recent evidence suggests if a team beats them twice in the regular season, they're going to beat them a third time in the playoffs. I'm going to buck history and trends here a little bit, and I'm going to take Tampa Bay plus the 3 because I think the Buccaneers have more life in them, and I feel like what I saw last week out of the Saints really, really concerned me even more than what I saw with the Buccaneers.